This is the Sean Hannity Show.
And this is Bob Just sitting in for Sean Hannity. The number here on the show, 1-800-941-7326. That's 1-800-941-SEAN. It's a great privilege to be here sitting in for Sean, and a great privilege to be able to talk to the man I have on the line is Dr. Ben Carson. He's a renowned neurosurgeon, also Fox News contributor. Increasingly, people will be seeing him on Fox News. He's the author of America the Beautiful. I have 2 copies of that, by the way, Dr. Carson. I have one to loan out. And did an amazing thing last year, spoke truth to power in a way that touched a lot of hearts. And by the way, I also would say, there's a movie, Gifted Hands, which is about Dr. Carson. I recommend it for family viewing, gather friends together. All right, I wanted to have many people know you now, of course, Dr. Carson. I was so touched, as many people were. I mean, of course, you talked about it when you were Power Player of the Week on Fox News Sunday a couple years ago. And of course, it's in the movie. A very important part of the movie is your relationship with your mother. Resonated with me for a number of reasons. I didn't grow up poor. I grew up privileged here in New York City, went to private schools, but I came from a broken home. I was in boarding schools when I was 5, and then in a Jewish boarding school for troubled kids, Pleasantville Cottage School, from 7 to 9. And so I grew up a lot of issues. You know, when you talk about your anger, I go, oh, yeah, I know that. In fact, it wasn't until I was about 30 I realized that I actually hated life, that there was things going on that I didn't even realize. And obviously that was true for you, too. And your mother was such a hero in your life. Tell us about her. I have a number of questions to ask you, obviously specifically to that. But tell us about your mother and your life with her.
She was quite an interesting person. She was one of 24 children and got married when she was 13 in a desperate attempt to escape the horrible environment in rural Tennessee. And she and my father moved to Detroit. He was a factory worker, and then she discovered some years later that he was a bigamist. And so there she was by herself again, trying to raise 2 young sons in the inner city. But the interesting thing about her was she was never a victim. And she never felt sorry for herself, and she never made excuses. And that was a good thing. The problem is she didn't accept excuses from us either. So that was a problem for us, you know. Yeah. So we had to learn, pretty early on, forget about making excuses because it's just not going to work. But I think that was perhaps the most important thing that she did for us. Go ahead. More importantly, we were both poor students, and she was observant, and she noticed in the homes that she cleaned, these were wealthy people, that they didn't sit around watching TV all day. They did a lot of reading, studying, and figuring things out. So she determined that that's the life that we were going to have. She just said, this is the way it is. We were extremely unhappy. Her friends were all telling her, you can't make boys stay in the house and read books. And I would echo that when I heard it, but it didn't matter because we had to do it. And interestingly enough, after a while, as I began to read those books, particularly about people of accomplishment, I began to notice something, and that is that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. Nobody else gets to determine that except you. And that was an incredible revelation for me and for my brother both. And we realized that our terrible situation did not have to continue. We had the power to change it.
You know, it's so remarkable. There are so many things to talk to you about, but I really wanted to focus or start with your mom and your childhood, because there are so many single moms out there who have boys, and which is my mother had 2 boys, and as I say, they were divorced when I was 5. So the problem of raising children in general as a single mom, but boys especially. But let's talk children in general, because there are a lot of single moms listening. Where do you feel? Where did your mother get her authority? She had a tough childhood. Yeah. How did she overcome? Their inevitably tough childhoods involve resentment, as I mentioned about my own life. How did she overcome that? I mean, where was she coming from on that? Where did she find her authority to love you the way she did and discipline you the way she did as a struggling single mom?
She found it in God. She became a believer and a very strong believer and imposed that upon us too, and we became strong believers as well. But the principles that are espoused, really by the Judeo-Christian values that founded this country, became very important in our household. And I think it makes enormous difference because you have to have something upon which to base your beliefs and your behavior. And, in our case, it was God, it was God's Word, it was the Bible. If you don't have that, you're going to find something else. And in many cases, it's, pop culture, secular progressive movement, whatever. But something will be your guiding light.
I having been to film school, pop culture is a particular thing of mine. And Dr. Dobson famously said several years ago that the culture is at war with parents. And a friend of mine, Rebecca Hagelin, writes about it all the time. I mean, the battle that parents are under because of the pop culture. And your mother solved that problem by turning off the television or, limiting you to a few hours a week. Tell us about that.
Well, she concluded that for the most part it was bad, but that there were perhaps a few good things. And she said, you have to choose ahead of time what 2 or 3 TV programs you're going to watch. So, my favorite TV program was something called GE College Bowl. Your older listeners might remember that. Every week they featured 2 colleges, and they had 4 contestants on each side, and they asked questions about everything. And that was really what inspired me to start studying classical art and classical music, because a lot of times the questions would be around those things, and you'd never learn that at inner city high school in Detroit. So I started actually going out into Detroit, going to the Institute of Arts, going to Wayne State University, going to concerts, going to everything, trying to learn all this stuff. And interestingly enough, it had a dramatic impact on my life because a lot of people are saying, why are you learning all that European stuff that's not culturally relevant to you? But what I say back to people is you get to decide how relevant you are by what you know. You can be relevant to just the people in your house or just the people in your city, or you can be relevant to the world, but you get to determine that. Nobody else does. That is so true. And increasingly, and I know you talk about PC, and I want to get into that a little with you, but people are increasingly tied down on what they're allowed to believe and what sources they're allowed to consider authentic. But before I get to that, I can't let the church and faith thing go, because I think it's, as a Christian myself, a Jew who became a Christian, I think it's so essential. And understanding, as a churchgoer, a church member, that I assume when you talk about your mother's faith, that you all had a church home. Yes.
And how are the men, and now this is something I deal with, this group I formed, Concerned Fathers Against Crime, and actually expressing fatherhood into the community in a macro way rather than a one-on-one way, not excluding one-on-one, but macro. How did the men of the church, what impact did they have in your life?
Well, there were several of them over the course of time who took it upon themselves to, take my brother and me to games and to various outings and just to spend time with us at the concerts. To try to help fill the void, because they knew that there was one. My mother also did everything that she possibly could to fill the void. She was always looking for free stuff that we might enjoy because we didn't have any money. But, there were a number of things that were free. And then there were also people who knew that we didn't have any money, and they would try to help. And it's something that I remember very vividly. And that's why, I have gone out of my way to be philanthropic and to help other people, because that's what we're here for, to help each other.
Yeah, and that's involved in the carsonscholars.com. That's
carsonscholars.org.
Oh, .org. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
I come from a community, born and raised here, but I live in Grants Pass, Oregon, Southern Oregon, Josephine County, and we have our pastors have been praying together for 20 years, and the impact that they have had on the community just by knowing that the churches have come together, pray together. I'd like to hear your thoughts. For you, I know you've stated more than once, including in that prayer breakfast speech, that you hate poverty. And right now, of course, with what the Pope said, and just generally speaking, poverty is always an issue, and of course, a specific biblical Christian calling. what are your feelings about poverty? You know, the left obviously just wants to throw money at it. I'm sorry, but that's the way I see it.
Sure.
Social workers, yes, but they come from a secular environment. They can't really speak truth to children. They can't do it like your church home does. You know, the fact that you even knew that you needed men in your life is, the father influence is very a Christian thing. Talk to us a little about what we face as a nation in terms of poverty.
Yeah, well, first of all, we need to recognize that there's a reason that churches and a lot of charitable organizations have tax exemptions, because it was recognized a long time ago that they are right there in the community with the people who are having the problems and represent the very best possibility of fighting that poverty. What does not help poverty is maintaining an environment that allows people to be comfortable with poverty. That's what we don't want to do. And, this all started sort of like in the late 60s. The Great Society. And I think people actually meant well. But it was like, you poor little thing, I'm going to take care of you. You really can't take care of yourself. And I'm going to give you this and that and the other. And what that did was create an environment of dependency. And look particularly what it has done to the African-American community. I mean, it's just been devastating. And a lot of people don't even recognize it. Just give me my check. And this is not what we want to do. And we want to empower people. We need to teach people, particularly in some of the poorer communities, to turn over dollars in their own community a couple of times before they send them out. That's how you create wealth. We need to teach people how to reach back and pull along others as you're climbing out. These are things that have happened in America in the past. We need to make sure that they continue to happen, particularly in the groups who are downtrodden. The worst thing we can do for them is to just give them handouts and maintain them in that position.
And so much a part of the PC, the kind of tyranny. I don't know if you ever read the Newsweek article from December 1990, Thought Police, but it's a chilling warning about PC, and called it actually Marxist and totalitarian. This is Newsweek, different. Yeah. Newsweek's a different. And ironically, 2 years, that warning came 2 years before PC rose to the White House with the Clintons. Right. And everything started to radically change as they infiltrated the different bureaucracies and things like that.
Well, it totally goes against, one of our founding principles of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and thought. And once you start allowing them to control your thoughts, the authoritarians and the news media, we're in big trouble. Now, I continue to hope and pray that the media will wake up and regain its integrity and become the heralds of truth once again. But, some people say that's a pipe dream. I'm not sure.
I'm not so sure, because I was liberal and I woke up, and I've stayed a Democrat, so I can warn Democrats to not vote Democrat, especially in this environment. I vote conservative, but I think there is hope. I tell you, this incredible lying that's going on, this incredible falsehood that was told the American people about Obamacare, and all the things that go with it, I think we may well be in a political awakening moment, and spiritual awakening might be right next to that, because there is truth in this world and there is lying. I'm talking to Dr. Ben Carson. Doctor, can you hold over the break and just to finish it out?
No problem.
Thank you very much. Talking to Dr. Ben Carson, who is a renowned neurosurgeon and Fox News contributor. Be right back.
Hannity.com.
And this is Bob Just sitting in for Sean Hannity, and what an honor and privilege it is. The number here, 1-800-941-7326. That's 1-800-941-SEAN. And I'm also very privileged to have Dr. Ben Carson here on the show with me. Dr. Carson is a renowned neurosurgeon, is also author of America the Beautiful, which I recommend highly, and a Fox News contributor. I understand you have another book coming up, but you can't talk about it yet. But I'd like to get you into education. I know that's a big issue. We have a couple of minutes. We all know there's a staggering, absolutely staggering. We have a 67% in my community. We have a 67% graduate, 67% graduate from high school. The numbers are horrible. The movie Waiting for Superman, the DVD Waiting for Superman came out, which is just, absolutely an indictment of American education. We know about the Reagan report in the early 80s, what an enemy would do to us. Here we sit. What are your thoughts on that? What can we do, Dr. Carson?
Well, it is very sad because across the nation, about 30% of people who enter high school do not graduate. And this is the technological age, the information age. There was a time, during the agricultural age, industrial age, where all you needed was a strong back and a willingness to work. Those days are long gone. So we need to recognize that, but we need to start intervening early on. And that's the reason that, through our program, we put these reading rooms in all over the country. But we particularly target Title I schools, where a lot of kids come from homes with no books. They go to a school with no library. Those are the ones who drop out. We can't afford that. We have to get them excited early on, and these rooms are places that no little kid would pass up.
And I know that's what you do, get them excited with your speeches and who you are, and I really appreciate who you are, Dr. Carson. CarsonScholars.org. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Carson. I hope to be able to talk to you again on the air.
Look forward to it. Take care
Thank
now.
you.
Happy New Year.
We know you never want to miss the Sean Hannity Show.